Hey y'all, I just wanted to make a quick video about an update to the slip situation I'm using. So this is a regular slip collar. Now it's just like a slip chain, which you might know as a choke chain. And as I show to all my clients, you would put it on, you make a P in front of you, right? So it would be like, I think it's a P for you, and then if I'm your dog and you're sliding it on over my face because you're facing me, that's how it would go on. And so now if I'm at your left hand, dog at your left hand side, and now it's going to relax when you relax it. And if you put it on upside down and then you go to tighten it and then release, it's not going to necessarily release on its own. It's kind of more finicky. So this is important if you're training with specifically just a slip chain and trying to keep it up at the top of the dog's neck and then have it release and relax when there's no pressure. The downside with chains is that they, along with this exact same slip collar, is that it's going to default to the base of the dog's neck because of gravity and because there's just nothing keeping it here. So I use these as especially second containment for use with the Hermspringer prong collar. But every dog that I start them out with some form of slip collar, whether it be like a thin collar like this. This was the situation, for example, with the Pomeranian Huskies that I trained. I had that you've probably seen videos of on the group. I have a slip collar for them and it works well for them. And then the owners also have access to this leash that, sorry, there's tape on this that I didn't realize was stopping it from being opened easily. So we will find a way to get into this quickly here. So this leather slip is real awesome. Because it does have these two, so it's a leather slip leash and collar. It does have these two stoppers, so it's great in that, you can set the collar on the dog, and then basically you would set the one stopper to stop it from getting too tight, right? It's still you still want it to get tight enough that they feel pressure, but not so tight that it has the possibility of actually blocking air, because 9 out of 10 times, well, 99 out of 10, 100 times, that's not the intention. It's not to remove the dog's ability to breathe, but that's a very real thing. And then this stopper, you would slide, which when you first get the leash is very difficult to slide it, and the more you use it, the easier it becomes. In fact, that's why I'm showing you these options, because then this will keep it at the top of the dog's neck. So now it's not going to default to the base because it really only has nowhere to go as long as you keep the stoppers at the right spot. Now the frustrating part with this slider is, one, it's difficult to slide when you first get it, and it kind of can get stuck in dog's hair. And two, the more you use it, the easier it is to slide. And then, you're on your walk and you're having to push the stopper down multiple times because it's just becomes so worn, because the leather stopper and the leather leash are made of the same material. And it's like the suede, kind of leather. So obviously, that's an option, and it's great. It's great because of how thin it is, especially. But I found another option that I'm very excited about, and this is one I'm going to be getting more of. So this is it's by Dingo Gear, and it's a collar I'm going to be getting for more dogs. So it's a little bit thicker than the leather slip, but you have the same two stoppers, and these stoppers are pinch and slide, and they're maybe you would have on a hat that you would have, to tighten it, the same kind of a idea. So same thing, where you would want to set the one stopper to stop it from getting, tighter than. So again, using my wrist as an example is kind of funny because it's so tiny. So, okay, maybe you'd want this first stopper to be right here. So that way it's getting, you know, there's tight pressure and everything, but it's not going to get any tighter than that stopper. So it's definitely not going to have a possibility of choking the dog. Then you want to have this one again, kind of make that little O-ring nestle, but you want it to have enough space in between this stopper and that stopper, and you want this stopper to be, you know, kind of over enough so that there is a difference between, there's relaxed, there's really no pressure here, there's no correction, it's just like the loose leash heel, and then, you know, you're tugging or giving a correction, and they feel the difference in pressure. They feel pressure, no pressure, you know, correction, relaxation, or correction, reward. So I hope that makes sense. Ultimately, with a loose leash walk and with a heel, you want there to be no pressure. You're not asking, you know, you don't want your dog to be pulling you down the road, and you're not pulling them to keep them in place. In fact, every time they create pressure, you give a correction and make it clear to them that, you know, that's going to be a consequence every time they create pressure. Now, if they're not heeding that consequence and listening to that, that's a matter of either giving a stronger correction or using different equipment, if over time they are ignoring it. And this is where I wanted to talk about these slips, because I wanted to yet again promote why I use Hermspringer. This is a great solution, and it's a great solution to start really any client out on, because some dogs will only need this. Some dogs will only need a slip collar where they're getting, you know, a little bit of pressure and a little bit of lack of pressure, and they can receive that as enough of a communication to stop certain behaviors or, you know, pick up new behaviors. But some dogs will just ignore this, and the reason this is not the safest tool is, you know, typically like it is for this one, because it actually can get as tight as possible. And were it to get caught on something, or even just you holding the leash, the more the dog gets used to it, especially then it slides to the base of their neck and then there's pressure, that is actually, you know, constricting their esophagus and trachea. And why this slip is safer, obviously, is because it has a stopper to stop it from getting that tight. But that stopper also stops the dog from feeling the squeeze of the tightness of the correction, which sometimes is what you need for certain dogs that are less physically sensitive. So this will work well for more physically sensitive dogs, and to prevent any you know, danger of the dog getting caught on something or choking, which is awesome. So this will be a tool I'll be using often. But then in cases where, you know, where the dog is just not responding to the corrections, or it's been 1 or even 2 weeks with this, and the dog was maybe responsive at first but then got used to it and is now ignoring it, and it's just not effective anymore. The Hermspringer is so effective and safe because it's a martingale collar. So if you don't know what a martingale is, it is, pardon me one second, it is here. So it's this type of collar where it's like this. So it has a certain amount of tightness that you then have on the dog's neck, and then when you attach your leash here and you pull, obviously this gets a little bit smaller, so there's a little bit of a squeeze, but it can only get that much tighter, about 2 to 2.5 inches, right? And the same design is true of, I have a really oversized one, but of the prong collar. So the idea, again, see this chain? This is the same like martingale design as the martingale I just showed you, and it can only get about 2.5 inches tighter. So when you put this around the dog's neck and it's properly fitted and properly sized, in terms of this, this collar would be like for a Tibetan Mastiff, right? A very, very, very large, very, very, very thick haired dog. And the medium is usually the largest one you would want to use for most dogs, including shepherds and fuzzy pups. So once this is on the dog's neck and it's properly sized, properly fitted, it can only evenly distribute the pressure by about 2 to 2.5 inches. And that's why when you size and fit it, you want it to have a little bit of that 2 to 2.5 inches of give, because it's just sitting on the dog's skin and fur and muscle and everything, and the dog doesn't necessarily feel it on. It's kind of like wearing a shirt with a tag. It's there, but until there's like a certain movement a certain way, that's not really felt. And then when a correction is given, that's when there's interaction with the collar in terms of any kind of a squeeze. And it's an evenly distributed squeeze, only intended to simulate the sensation that another dog, that a dog would have when another dog would go to correct them. When another dog goes to correct, they go to nip at the muscle, and it's intended to be kind of like you would pinch someone, not pinch like with your nails, like when you were a kid and you're trying to hurt somebody, but like pinch like almost like, hey, stay awake, right? Kind of that kind of a pinch. That's the same sensation that another dog gets from another dog when they get corrected. And so that simulation of sensation is what this collar is meant to simulate. Looks terribly scary. It's not meant to do any harm. In fact, it is way safer. Sounds crazy, right? It's way safer than this. It's way safer even than this. It's way safer even than this. Why? Because a dog is going to get used to ignoring this very quickly, especially a not so sensitive dog physically. So the reason why I bring Herm Sprenger in is, it's always when it's necessary and obvious that the dog's not going to listen to another tool, but it is truly, truly the safest tool that I use. So I just wanted to take a kind of second and explain and talk through and show a few of the different pieces of equipment that I use and why. Again, that's a giant Herm Sprenger. I usually use the small or sometimes the medium, but typically the small, and then just add more links depending on the dog. But I always make sure to properly, assess whether or not it's a case where the dog needs a prong, size it, fit it, teach the owner exactly how to use it, how not to use it, and the martingale design is just so brilliant. And so I love to use martingale collars. Ultimately, you'd want to get your dog on a flat buckle martingale, just like this is. Maybe that does have a chain here, because that same zip sound that they'll get from the chain was similar to the same sound they'll have from the prong, so they'll associate that sound. Or even just a flat martingale like this with all fabric. So that's the ultimate goal. But getting the dog there, it takes teaching them deliberately with each tool what the result is we're trying to accomplish with that tool, which is to get them to listen to just our verbal command only, and for us to not lean heavily on those corrections. So I hope that was helpful, and thanks for sticking with me through the description, explanation, and all that of all this equipment. So the other last thing here is that I attached the drag line, right? That would be the leash that they're dragging around with them to this. And so this really is the piece of equipment that now every dog starting out with me is going to get set up with. And depending on how the dog responds in the first 1 week, possibly 2 weeks, I will then add more equipment depending on what the dog needs. And sometimes dogs need prongs to just start out with because of their physical sensitivity level, and that, but this will remove the concern. Instead of using the slip chain or the rope slip, this will remove the concern of having them drag around the slip chain with the possibility of you grabbing it and pulling on it and then like having their airway cut off. This definitely removes that concern. So hope this has been helpful. Thanks for watching, and I will be back with another equipment video at some point in the future.